Dispatch is famous for one thing, making the ordinary feel like a secret. A casual stroll becomes a headline. A friendly gesture becomes a rumor. And a simple detail, something most people would miss, suddenly becomes a spark that sets the internet on fire. This time, it wasn't even a headline. Dispatch posted the photos like they always do. Clean, crisp, no dramatic commentary. Just the images and the moment. No bold claims. No scandal. Just a scene. But fans saw what Dispatch didn't say. And that, in the world of fandom, is where the real story begins. Shen Yue and Dylan Wang were at a promotional event. The kind of event that looks calm on the surface, but is actually a carefully managed performance, where every smile, every angle, every gesture is rehearsed or at least expected to be appropriate. They walked into the venue separately. Nothing unusual. 2 stars, 2 entrances, 2 waves. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. The air buzzed with excitement. Shen Yue was wearing a soft, pastel outfit. Simple, elegant, and very much her style. Dylan Wang was dressed in a classic suit. Clean lines, quiet confidence. The two of them were the kind of pair that made fans sigh because they looked like they belonged in the same story. The event went smoothly. They greeted fans, answered questions, posed for photos. Everything was normal, but then the moment happened. The moment that Dispatch didn't point out. The moment fans noticed because they were watching with a kind of devotion that only comes from love and obsession combined. Shen Yue and Dylan stood side by side for a photo. It was the kind of photo that usually lasts only seconds. Click, smile next. But in the photo, there was a detail that seemed intentional. Not obvious, not dramatic, just subtle enough to feel like a secret code. Shen Yue's hand was resting lightly on Dylan's arm. Not a full hold, not a grip, just a gentle touch, like she was steadying herself or making sure he knew she was there. It wasn't a pose. It wasn't a public display. It was a tiny gesture that said more than 1,000 words. Fans noticed immediately. "Did you see that?" Someone posted. "It's so subtle, but it's definitely there." She's holding his arm like she belongs there. And then the theories started. Some fans argued it was accidental. Maybe she needed balance. Maybe she was adjusting her stance. Maybe it was simply the way she stood in crowded spaces. But others saw it differently. They saw intention. They saw a message. Because in the world of celebrity culture, especially in East Asia, public intimacy is rare. When it happens, it's often carefully calculated. A hand on an arm, a shoulder brush, a glance that lasts too long. It's not that celebrities don't feel. It's that they are trained to keep feelings private. So when a detail slips out, even for a second, fans treat it like a gift. It's not just a touch. It's a clue. And fans, being fans, turned that clue into a story. They went back to older photos, searching for patterns. They looked at interviews, searching for hidden meaning in jokes and laughter. They examined behind-the-scenes clips, where the camera didn't always catch the whole truth. They found things, not proof, not confirmation, just patterns, like the way Dylan would look at Shen Yue when she spoke, with that calm attentiveness that makes it feel like the world around them disappears. Or the way Shen Yue would laugh a little too freely around him, like she was allowing herself to be a different version of herself when he was near. Fans call this reading between the lines. Psychologists might call it pattern recognition. Either way, it's how stories are born. And this detail, the hand on the arm, was the spark. But the internet didn't just stop there. It didn't just admire the moment. It turned it into a lesson. Fans began discussing the meaning of touch in public. They talked about how small gestures can carry huge emotional weight. They talked about the cultural context of celebrity behavior, how stars are often expected to be perfect, composed, and emotionally distant. And then they laughed, because fans always find a way to laugh. One fan joked, "She touched his arm, and suddenly the whole fandom is studying body language like we're in university." Another wrote, "If this is intentional, then it's the most beautiful, quiet rebellion I've ever seen." Humor is a coping mechanism. It helps fans process their excitement without losing their minds. But the underlying excitement was real, because the detail felt like a choice. A choice that said, without saying it, "I'm comfortable with you. Dispatch didn't mention it, but fans did, and that became the story. The next day, videos of the event began circulating again, with clips slowed down and rewatched frame by frame. People paused on the moment, zoomed in, and replayed it. The detail was tiny, but it was clear. Shen Yue's fingers rested lightly on Dylan's arm for just a second that felt like forever, and fans began to imagine the scene behind the scene. What if it wasn't just a gesture? What if it was a promise? What if Shen Yue had been thinking, I could be myself around him? What if Dylan had been thinking, she doesn't have to pretend with me? Fans started creating narratives. Some wrote stories where they were childhood friends who reunited and found comfort in each other's presence. Others wrote stories where they were co-stars who slowly became best friends, and then something more. Some imagined them as two people who found a quiet kind of love in the chaos of fame, and the most popular narrative was the one that felt most real. Two people who were tired of pretending, choosing honesty in a world that demands secrecy. The beauty of fan fiction is that it fills in the gaps. It created a world where the moments that fans wish were real become real, even if only in imagination. In this case, the detail was enough. It was a small gesture, but it was a gesture that spoke to something deeper, and fans loved it. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was gentle, because it didn't scream. It whispered. It didn't demand attention. It earned it. The fandom began to share their favorite intentional details in their own lives. A hand on a shoulder, a touch on the arm, a small gesture that said, I'm here. People began to comment on how rare it is to see tenderness in public without spectacle. They spoke about how the world has become loud, and how sometimes the quietest moments are the most powerful. In the weeks that followed, the detail became a symbol, not just a Shen Yue and Dylan Wang, but the kind of love fans want to believe in, gentle, respectful, and quietly real. And then, as if the universe was listening, another event happened. A year later, the same two stars appeared together again. Another photo, another crowd, another set of cameras. This time, the moment was different. They stood closer. Their hands touched again, this time briefly, and then they separated. The crowd cheered. Fans sighed. The internet exploded again. But this time, it wasn't just about the detail. It was about the story. Because fans had already decided what it meant. It meant that their favorite stars were allowed to be human, allowed to show tenderness, allowed to have a quiet connection that didn't need to be shouted. Dispatch didn't say it, but fans believed it. And in the world of fan fiction, belief is the most powerful kind of truth. So the next time you see a small gesture in a photo, remember, sometimes the most